Crow is one of those stories that's so simple it's classic. It's a revenge story, a man coming back from the grave to avenge the death of himself and his fiancée. The book The Crow by James O'Barr was not exactly well known in the comics world, though the high visibility of the movie really helped it, and there have been various Crow sequels both to the book and the film. Though they're not really sequels in the traditional sense, they always feature a completely different person being brought back from the grave and killing those responsible for their deaths. There were 3 more movies and a TV series, which was sort of a remake to the first film. To this day, there's a cult fan following for The Crow, but here's the thing that kind of gets me. I think the reason the movie, and therefore the comics, are so visible is because the star of the movie, Brandon Lee, died during the production of the film. The story is told a lot, but there tends to be a lot of misinformation. So let me just set the record straight. Basically what happened is while making the film, there was a scene that required them to show rounds being loaded into a gun. Even though the gun would not be fired, the crew took a safety precaution of removing the gunpowder from each round. Later on, they loaded the same gun with blanks to film a scene where it was being fired. But one of the dummy rounds from the previous scene had become lodged in the barrel of the gun. The force of the blank basically caused the gun to shoot the dummy round, which struck Brandon Lee and became lodged in his spine. He died hours later in the hospital. What most people wonder is, in which scene in the movie does he die? Well, the answer is none. The footage was destroyed without being developed, and a reshot scene was done from his character's point of view so that you never see him, because he's not there, and the character who was supposed to shoot him instead threw a knife. Brandon Lee's untimely death was a huge tragedy and it almost killed the movie, but they decided to press on using a stunt double for certain scenes and digitally imposing Lee's face onto the double in certain scenes. This was new technology at the time, but it was done pretty well, I thought. The mystique of Lee's death, I think, made the movie more popular. I think a lot of people saw the movie because of this, and I think that this is a good thing because it's a good film. So here's the story. Lee plays Eric Draven, a musician who's killed by a gang of thugs with colorful names. They throw him out the window of his apartment and rape and beat his fiancée, Shelley, to death. We later learn that this wasn't a random killing, that Shelley was targeted for starting a petition against tenant eviction. The movie takes place in Detroit, and well, if you think that some of the crazy shit going on is unrealistic, that's because you've never been to Detroit. A year later, Eric is brought back to Earth by the Crow, who was to carry his spirit to the afterlife, as the rage and sadness was so great that he has to return to make things right. The rest of the movie follows Eric hunting down and killing the gang members who killed him. In the end, he's ready to return to heaven, but the gang boss Top Dollar captures a young girl named Sarah, who is sort of a little sister character to Shelley. Eric goes to rescue her, but finds himself vulnerable when Top Dollar's hitman shoots the Crow, severing his supernatural powers. He also learns that Top Dollar was the one responsible for ordering the hit on Shelley, and how he has to kill him as well. The Crow is dark and stylish, and when I was 14 and it came out, it was one of my favorite movies. I later on read the book, which, honestly, I have to say, I prefer the movie. The book had lots of great ideas and good artwork, but really it is just non-stop violence. The movie added a lot more of the human element. I hadn't seen it in years, so when I watched it for this review, it was with some trepidation. I wondered if it was one of those things that you like when you're a kid, but it winds up looking dumb years later. But The Crow has held up remarkably well. One thing that I have to praise is Brandon Lee's acting. It really is a shame that he never got to be a big star, because he definitely was not just Bruce Lee's son. He was also quite a decent actor. I think the best scene in the movie is when Eric meets Sarah for the first time since being resurrected. Lee plays it perfectly. He first thinks that she's just some kid, but then he recognizes her. He at first tries to hide his face, wanting to spare her the pain, but then he quotes a line from one of his songs, knowing that she'll realize it's him. Unfortunately, a lot of the people involved in the movie were traumatized by witnessing Brandon Lee's death firsthand, and many of them never made films again. There were 3 sequels, but I only saw the first one, The Crow City of Angels. That was a completely different cast, but very much the same premise. Honestly, that movie tends to get a really bad rap, but I never understood why. Though the performances aren't as strong as the original movie, I felt it was more stylish and with better directing. Oh well. One interesting thing about the sequel is that Iggy Pop was in it. The character Funboy in the original book was actually based off of Iggy Pop, so when they made the first film they tried to get him to play Funboy, but his touring schedule wouldn't allow it. So he was in the sequel as a similar character named Curve. I have a feeling that a lot of you saw this many times as a kid, like me, and you probably haven't seen it since, so I'm here to tell you it's worth revisiting. I'll give The Crow a 9 out of a possible 10.